Hey guys,
That
welcome
was
back
awesome.
to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, if you want to know how to build a successful business, you're going to want to listen to this episode. So make sure you subscribe, make sure that you get notifications because you're not going to get this information anywhere else on the internet. Guys, we're talking about mindset, which is the key to every kind of success, and also generosity. We're talking to my friend April. She's a veteran. She's a keynote speaker, has one of the best podcast hosts that I've been binge listening to. She's truly amazing. She's an author. She's the Swiss Army knife of mindset. April, welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. I got to tell you, I was jamming out to that intro. That is high energy and awesome. I was having a good time.
Yeah, my friend did a great job on that, and he really gets me pumped up when I hear it. Even if I'm feeling down, I get all pumped up. So before we get started, because I got a traumatic brain injury, so if I don't mention it, I'm never going to remember it. What is your definition of resiliency?
My definition of resiliency would be being willing to be your own hero, to understand that when things go down and there's no one there to rescue you, that you always have the ability to rescue yourself.
And I love that because since this last year, since I started this show, I've really taken a big deep dive into mindset. And the most successful people in the world, they say that nobody is coming to save you. You're it. And it's all about mindset. Whether you succeed, whether you fail, it's all within your mind. So I definitely want to take a deep dive into that. But first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you came from, where did you grew up, and how did you become the superstar that you are today?
Oh, you're so kind calling me a superstar. So, I am a business accelerator and a mindset expert, expert through trial and error, absolutely. And originally from a tiny little town in Tennessee called Saudi Daisy, and grew up there and really wanted to have a bigger life than I saw there when I was a kid, and was very fortunate in being able to join the Air Force, see the world, really expand not only my worldview, but the way that I saw people and how we interacted, and learned so much about leadership and mindset as well, which then led me to the corporate world and then starting my own firm about 6 years ago.
Okay, all right, guys, we got to go. It's been nice talking to you guys. So first of all, let's hop back a little bit because I love my veterans. Especially love my female veterans because I don't think you guys get enough props. So thank you for coming on. So talk to us about your recruiting story because everybody has a different recruiting story. What was yours like?
My recruiting story was almost like a bad dating story, if you will. So, when the recruiters came to school and you took the test for entry, I took it for extra credit in English class. I had no intentions of joining the military. I wanted to go to a very certain school in the Northeast. And so I wouldn't take their phone calls, I wouldn't give them the time of day. And then, even though I got a partial scholarship to Boston University, I was from such humble means that I couldn't swing it without a ton of loans, and I was afraid of that debt. So I ended up paying to go to a school that had offered me a scholarship, which was humbling. And I think that you need as many humbling experiences as possible, especially when you're in your teens and 20s. And I met someone who was in the service when I was in, and found out that, oh my gosh, all that stuff that you wouldn't listen to from the recruiters because you felt like you were too girly to be in the military, those are really great opportunities. And you can get your education, you can be a broadcaster, you can live overseas. And I literally got up in the middle of class and left to go and talk to a recruiter. It was this big, I have somewhere I have to be moment that was a little anticlimactic because I went to college at night and the recruiter's office was closed. But you can bet that I was there Saturday morning in a suit, no less, telling the recruiter that I wanted to be a broadcaster.
So I've talked to Delta Force, I've talked to Navy SEALs, I've talked to pretty much every job in the military, but
Mm-hmm.
this is the first time I've ever talked to somebody that got into the military for broadcasting. So what was that like, and what was your experiences? Now I know you've interviewed some amazing people, Joint Chiefs of Staff and stuff like that. So, what was your experience getting into media in the military, where there's not a whole lot of leniency with media?
It was so interesting because at the time, it was really highly regarded by the media. And remember, this is 20 years ago. So the relationship with everyone in the media was different. There was no social media, things were not as accessible. And so getting into that role was amazing because anyone who was military trained in broadcasting was higher regarded by the media once you were on the civilian side than anyone who'd gone to school for it, because the training that they did was so extensive and it was really fantastic. And for me, though, it was actually hard to get in. I failed my first audition because my recruiter had never had someone asked to be a broadcaster. There were 300 of us in the entire Air Force, just to give you an idea of how small of a career field it was. And we did something silly. We recorded the voice audition on a boombox in a room with no furniture, so it just sounded terrible. And I failed that first audition. But interestingly, it was generosity and helping someone else that ended up getting me not only into the service, but into broadcasting. Because after I failed that audition and really took a nosedive personally, because it was the first big failure that I had gone through, my recruiter asked me if I would help somebody else audition. And a lot of folks are like, oh my gosh, how could you do that when you had failed? Wasn't that just like rubbing it in your face? And for some reason, it felt like, well, somebody should go. And I really wanted to help this other gentleman. And over the course of helping him do his audition, because he had real broadcast experience, he kept telling me the things that they'd said about my voice weren't true. There might have been something wrong with my audition. So I did a little more investigating and submitted another audition and ended up going in, and not just going in, but being able to anchor the premier program in the Air Force, that a job that next to no one got to have. And I never would have done that if it hadn't been on my heart to help that other person. So I share that story with people a lot because sometimes you don't realize that helping others benefits you as well, but it is never the wrong answer.
I love it. And for me, as you probably know already, I'm all about paying it forward. I'm all about helping other people because, like my friend Gary Vaynerchuk taught me when we had lunch that one day, he said, um, if you promote your friends 10 times more than you promote yourself, you'll never have to promote yourself again. So that's my focus in life is helping others, and this way, I everywhere I go. I mean, I've been with my wife, and we've been to Disney. Somebody knows me. I've been
I
across
love
the
it.
world. Somebody knows me. So it's kind of like I'm all about building relationships. So I love what you're talking about. But now I also want to talk, because of course you had, like everybody else, you had to go through basic and you had to do all that stuff.
Hmm.
But when you're around people like the Joint Chiefs, when you're around people that are super high ranked, there's a different mindset than just the average everyday Joe. And since I've started this show, I've interviewed several 7, 8, 9 figure earners, top performers, and there's a different mindset between them and everybody else. So, did you start to feel that? Did you start to notice that when you started interviewing these people and being around them and being in earshot of them?
So, what was interesting is the thing that I noticed the most about people who had achieved extreme levels of success is that overall they were kinder and more giving than people who felt like they were in the struggle on the way up. And the lesson I took from that is, okay, if the most successful people are actually the ones that are the kindest and the most giving, then what would happen if you were the kindest and the most giving on the way up too? And how would that impact your life and other people's lives? And what was really interesting is that was a counterintuitive thing, especially when I was in the corporate world and I was in sales. People would be like, ABC, always be closing, and I was ABH, always be helping. And without fail, though, that would end up putting me in the position of being the most successful. And I really saw that there wasn't just correlation, there was actually causation. And really being focused on how you can help other people isn't just the nice thing to do or the right thing to do, however you want to put it. It is actually also the smartest thing that you can do if you want to be a successful person. And if you come at it from a place of giving, when you have that success, well, wow, then you can just impact that many more people, which is really incredible.
All right. So then let me ask you a question, because I've had, like I said, I've had, I don't know, 20, 30 different female veterans on the show. And it's not all unicorns and rainbows. And a lot of, I'm especially, I guess, from my thought is, when you're going into broadcasting, which back then I'm sure was pretty much a male dominated field. And then you're in the military, which is pretty much a male dominated field. I'm sure that like I said, it wasn't all unicorns and rainbows. And I'm sure that you had to have a tough mindset to deal with some, I can say the word on my show because it's my show. I'm sure you had to deal with some assholes coming through, right?
I think that there are jerks everywhere, right? There are assholes everywhere. But I will tell you that I think I encountered fewer people with that kind of mentality of you can't do this because you're a woman or, stay in your lane or any of those things. I encountered fewer people like that in the military than I did in the corporate world. It was actually jarring when I went into the corporate world and I would just want to share my opinion with a C-suite leader because I saw a way to improve something or someone on the executive team, and I would have people counsel me and say, April, you just can't tell them how to improve it. You need to couch it with a question and be kinder and come at it softer. And I wasn't being rude or disrespectful. I was simply stating how I felt and not talking around their ego, which I found that I didn't have to do very much in the service, but definitely had to do more in the corporate world.
All right. So now, how many years did you put in the military?
Almost 7.
All right. So now, because I noticed that anybody, whether they're female, whether male, um, when we transition out of the military, to a lot of us, not everybody, it's not what we think it's going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like my friend Sergeant Nick Valentine talks about, once we transition out, the military no longer gives a shit about you. The phone stops ringing. We lose. So, what was your transition out of the military like?
It was a little weird because I got out during an odd time. They were having a drawdown. So I got orders somewhere that I didn't want to go, and they were actually in the process of saying, hey, you can just say no to the orders, and then you don't have to finish your enlistment. You can just leave. Well, if you did say no to the orders, you just leave and we'll give you up to 6 months to exit. And I had my degree. I'd done that best job I ever wanted to do. It was a good time for me to go. So I gave the Air Force 2 weeks notice because I didn't think it through very much. And what was funny is I totally underestimated how much I would miss the camaraderie, how much I would miss the family. And I don't think it's that they don't care about you anymore. I think it's that you're not in their sphere, right? We're not together every day. We're not working jointly on this mission. I am still wonderful friends with a lot of people I served with, and we have chosen to stay in touch. But it's never the same because you're not a team anymore. And I think individuals experience that if they play high level competitive sports. I think individuals experience that, if they're in some kind of club and then they're not in it anymore and they've been in it for years. So it's different for everyone, but I certainly missed it. It felt like family, and nothing before or since has.
See, and for me, for people that know my story, I was in for 23 years in National Guard and regular Army time. And after I got thrown out for being a drug addict the first time and got back in, and after I got back in, I did everything I could to become the ultimate soldier. And then when I got hurt on duty and lost my vision, can't see, can't shoot, we don't need you. And they medically discharged me on Memorial Day 2012. And that was the day that I attempted suicide because I didn't know who Richard was. I knew who Sergeant Kaufman was,
Mm-hmm.
but who was Richard? And I find a lot of people that get out of the military, first responders, police officers, athletes, once we hang up that uniform and we're no longer Sergeant so and so, or whatever your rank was, and you hit the streets and you're Joe Snuffy, it's kind of we kind of get lost and we don't know how to fit into our new life. So how did you start fitting into the new life?
I think that's a great question. And I think that there are lots of times in life, military is one, but I think this probably happens to stay at home moms, probably happens to parents once their kids leave the nest, right? There are all these different inflection points in our lives where the identity that we've chosen for ourselves is no longer our identity. So for me, it was more about, and this isn't the right way to do it, this is just what I did. I was looking to prove myself in this new system. So I think that what made it easier for me is instead of focusing on the fact that I didn't know who I was, because I didn't know who I was outside of the service either, it was more, who do I need to be successful in this new environment? And I'll be whoever that is. And the unfortunate thing about that is that I wasn't being authentically myself because I didn't feel like that would be rewarded. So it was, okay, I need to dress in a suit and be severe and be tough, but be respectful and do this. And so I cultivated this personality during my time in corporate and only let myself be myself once I was the top salesperson or had signed a $90 million contract, done something to prove my mettle, if you will. So I think that we all do the best that we can in those situations, because I don't think at this point we do a very good job of preparing folks for what that's going to feel like and what kind of inner work you need to do for yourself to really figure out who you are.
All right. So before we get, I want to dig deep into that. I want to dig deep into sales. But first, I want to thank our sponsors. As you guys know, my sponsors are 100% veterans, 100% of the time. Guys, if you have a company and you want to have your own swag, Really Designs is an amazing company. They make my t-shirts, they make my hats, they make my coffee mugs, they do everything for my swag. And so they can do anything from a keychain all the way down to hoodies and t-shirts. And like I said, they're a veteran owned company. And if you guys order, like my t-shirt says, today I decide, and on the back says, this t-shirt saves lives, ask me how. If you order one of my t-shirts or any of my hats or anything, 100% of the proceeds go to help veterans struggling with PTSD and homelessness. So guys, if you love to wear comfortable swag with a mission, write swag down below and I'll get you the information. Also, if you guys love StreamYard, I love StreamYard. I almost have 500 shows on StreamYard. If you want to start your own show, they will actually throw you some cash to start your own show. So if you guys are looking to start your own show, just write show down below and I'll get you that information. So, April, let me ask you, because I found, or the people that I've talked to that are veteran business owners, I call them Vetpruners. When we get out of the military, it's hard for us to adapt because, in the military, we do our job to however long it takes. But when you get into the civilian sector, they clock in at 9, they're at the water cooler till 9:30, take lunch at 12, going home at 4, and you have the veterans sitting there like, wait a minute, we're not done. We still have work to do. And a lot of us think that's a negative, but I think it's a positive thing. Our work ethic and our attention to detail is one of the best things, I think, when you become getting into the corporate world or becoming a vetrepreneur. Do you agree?
100%. Absolutely. And it's interesting that you use the word vetrepreneur because I volunteer with an organization called Warrior Rising. And it is actually the largest nonprofit that supports veteran entrepreneurs, which they also call vetrepreneurs. And if anybody who is a veteran is looking to start their own business, we offer just an incredible amount of resources, from education and mentoring from business owners to also financial help in getting grants and just a lot of things to help you get started with your business. So if you are a veteran that's looking to do that, I'd love to share that resource with you. It is warriorrising.org, started by an amazing Green Beret, Jason Van Camp. And he really wants to give veterans the opportunity to earn their future.
Well, actually, I'm writing that down because as you're going through everything, I'm writing everything down because,
Well, thank you.
like I said, if I have a TBI and if I don't remember it, I'm not going to remember it. And a lot of times, if you say something pertinent, because when I lost my vision, I still had my podcast, so I was able to hear, and my hearing got a lot better, and I'm able to hang on to certain words that people say. So if you see me writing stuff down, I'm paying attention to you. I'm not doing anything else. So I just want to let you know that.
No, I
So
appreciate it. And it would be okay if you were doing something else. I would assume, Richard, it was very important.
no, it's all about you. It's all about the audience today. So now, talk to us about getting out and trying to fit into the civilian sector, getting into sales, getting into business.
So I actually write about this in one of the chapters of my book, Magic Blue Rocks, because I basically harassed a company into hiring me, Richard, because I found, as many veterans do when I got out and I started sending out resumes, and I just expected people would want to hire me. I had great experience. I had a degree, and I thought, I've learned so many valuable skills. And while I had an easy time getting interviews and job offers in the broadcasting world, when I wanted to transition to business, that was much more difficult. And what I did, and this is a little bit of a resilience thing, is just fall back on the fact that when I was younger, I'd worked as a temporary employee, as an executive assistant in different roles. And I thought, you know what? This is a little bit humbling. I think that I've gotten further than this in my career, but if I take a temporary executive assistant role, I will be in the building of companies I want to work at, and I will have a chance to meet people and show them what I can do. So that is actually how I ended up getting my first role, both in, at the time, it was a learning role in business and marketing that would groom me to go into sales. But literally, when HR said I wasn't qualified, I would use my access that I had because I was an assistant to someone in finance, to schedule meetings with other executives in the areas that I wanted to work in.
I love it. So, guys, like I said, make sure you guys are subscribing and making sure you hit notifications, because you're not going to get real life information from real life veteran and vetrepreneurs like you are here. So, my question is, we all know that the corporate world is totally different, and a lot of veterans, when they get out of the military, they put their own resume together and they hand it over, and it has nothing but a bunch of acronyms, nomenclatures, and the person actually just looks at it, eyes glaze over, and they just next, because they don't understand what the hell you're talking about. So talk to us a little bit about that, about how to actually set yourself up for success if you are going for a job.
100%. Look, remember how we handled things when we were in the service? Your TMO shipment was late, and you called Bobby, who you knew over there in operations and TMO, to find out where it is, see if he knew someone, see if he could help you, right? That's what we did in the service. That's how you get a job in the corporate world, in the civilian world. I would tell you to not even bother sending your resumes out to people. Find one of your veteran friends who has already gotten out of the service. If you don't have any veteran friends that have already gotten out of the service, hit me up on LinkedIn, send me your resume. I'll give you some advice and thoughts. But what you really want is to find someone who already knows, likes, and trusts you, who will give you a warm introduction to a company, to someone who will interview you, instead of randomly sending resumes out day after day and then being upset that you don't get a call back. Because life is all about relationships. Getting hired is all about relationships. And if you don't know anyone in the civilian world, like I said, hit me up on LinkedIn. You're going to have to be willing to spend time interviewing with me so I can understand what kind of skills you have. And then I will link you up with folks that I know. And I'll tell you, I don't think there's a veteran that I have ever met who wouldn't do the same thing for a veteran who is getting out. But remember that it's about relationships. It's not about how many resumes you can send out. It's about how many people that you know, and you can make a list of the top 10 people you know, and do they have contacts at other companies, and really start making those warm introductions. That's where you're going to make a difference in finding a job that you like.
And I was helping somebody with a young lady with her LinkedIn yesterday, because I guess you've seen that. I think we got voted one of the top 10 veteran influencers on LinkedIn. And
Nice. Congratulations.
no, it's all about building relationships again. And she was wondering, okay, how do you do it? How do you get almost 30,000 followers? I said, well, I have never sent a canned message once.
Hmm.
I've never spammed anybody ever. And for me, it's all about building relationships. Like, I do all my damage, mostly all my damage on LinkedIn. And like, if I'm going to reach out to you, I'm going to say, the first time I reach out to you, I'm going to say, hey, April, I love your podcast. I love everything you are doing. Keep being a shining light in this dark world. Period.
Love it.
Stand. I'm not asking for anything. I just want to let you know that you're appreciated, that you're doing great work, because people want to know that they're appreciated, and they don't want to know that, oh, what are they trying to sell me? And then the second,
Absolutely.
usually 99% of somebody, they'll say, wow, thank you. Nobody's ever said that to me on LinkedIn, because usually I'm getting those 3-page pitches. And then I'll
Right.
usually say,
From someone you don't know at all.
yep. And then I'll say, April, I love everything you're doing. I would love to have you to come on our show so I can help promote your podcast and help promote your book. So for me, it's always, like Gary taught me, always providing 10 times more value than I ask for, than I get. So talk about us a little bit about providing value before you ask for anything.
So, one of the principles that I use, and actually basically the principle that I use to help businesses in scaling and growing, and it works whether you're a solopreneur or you're just someone in an environment, your career, corporate, whatever, or you're a huge company, and it's the generosity culture, which is just made up of 3 principles, and it is pouring into your people, your clients, and your community. And the idea is just what you're saying, Richard, is how do you offer value to your people, to your clients, to your community, and you're pouring into them with your time, with your effort, with giving them of yourself in service of their success. Now, what's so great about that is when you do that, the good that you're putting out in the world, that is going to come back to you. Now, you don't have to give to this person with the expectation of, ooh, law of reciprocity, they'll give back to me. No, you just put it out there, and you don't have to worry about who is the person who's going to come back and say, hey, I'd like to help you with this, or hey, I want to recommend you for this. That's just naturally going to happen because you are being of so much value. And if you're at a point where you need to ask someone for help, then they already know, like, and trust you because you've offered so much value to them in the initial conversations and initial interactions that you've had with them. So, leading with generosity, leading with offering value is always the right thing to do.
And some people, they'll ask me, well, because I think we're still a small show, even though we're in the top 0.5% in the world. People ask me, well, how do you get Robert Kiyosaki? How do you get Sharon Lechter? How do you get David Meltzer? How do you get these 7, 8, 9-figure earners? And I tell them the way I do it, and this is a hack somebody can use if you're looking to get close to somebody or looking to get them on your show or as a friend. I invested in them. Like, I bought, I had Mr. Steve Sims on last week, and I actually bought his book, read his book, and promoted his book on all my channels with somewhere they can buy it for, so they can buy the book. And he saw that because I wasn't asking for anything. I was saying, listen, I want to be part of your circle, but I have to earn my way into your circle. And the best way to do that is to add extreme value. And when somebody sees your name popping up all the time, they're eventually going to be like, wait a minute, who's this Richard Kaufman guy? You know what I mean? So
That's awesome.
I think that's what you're talking about is sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to go into certain arenas, you have to either earn your way in or buy your way in, like Richard Brunson talks about. But I think it's always better to earn your way in into those circles. What are your thoughts?
I think I look at it a little differently. It's the same, it's just a little nuanced. I am not as intentional about trying to quote unquote earn my way into being closer to someone as it is that when you are looking to be of value and be of service to people in all of your interactions, you happen to just get invited into those circles because you're offering that value. So there's not always the same intent there to do it to get something,
Mm-hmm.
but there is always the intent to be of service, and it has the same results of those folks just saying, "Oh, hey, I know who you are. You did this and you did that," or "Oh, she's a really great person to talk to about this." And those doors just tend to open for you because people see the value that you're offering all the time, and it makes it easier for them to trust you, because the more successful you become, the more people want to be in your inner circle,
Yeah.
but not always for the best reasons. And
Yeah.
so the folks that are offering value right off the top, it's easier to trust someone who's doing that.
Yep. And I have a friend, her name is Tammy, and she said, like for a lot of people that are beginning entrepreneurs, you can't, a lot of us can't afford, $10,000 to have a dinner to sit down with Richard Branson,
Right.
but you could volunteer to go take out the garbage, help sit people. You can go to the venue, say, listen, I'm here to help. Whatever you need me to
Mm-hmm.
do, I'm going to volunteer. Whatever you need, and people don't realize you're going to get the same information that you didn't have to pay 10 grand for, all because you decided I'm going to add value and also help out, but also learn at the same time. Because sometimes I realize that even people that say the most successful people, like especially in broadcasting or in the film industry, a lot of times people had to volunteer their time. They had to
Absolutely.
intern and, for a year or two in order to get where you want to go. So talk about that a little bit, that sometimes you have to, take another road to get to where you're going.
Oh, absolutely. So many times. And I'll tell you that I have no qualms about working for free in order to show the value that I can provide. I actually know an entrepreneur out of Australia who's done just some fantastic things and grown some amazing businesses. And he believed in it so much, he actually gives people a 2-week paid audition with him. Now, he'll pay them to do the work, but the idea came to him because people who really wanted to work for his company were willing to work for a couple weeks for free and show who they were. And I had done keynote and public speaking for my entire career, both when I was in the service and when I was in corporate. But when I started speaking initially, before I got paid, I took unpaid gigs. I was just happy to have the practice. I was happy to get out there. And there was no shame in my game about not getting paid to go and do that, because as you do it more and more, then people see the value that you have to offer. And that's when you're getting the paid gigs and you're getting the much higher paid gigs. And it's funny, one of my mentors, he did that initially as well. And the first time he got paid for a speaking gig, the very first time, it was because Microsoft happened to be involved and wanted him to be a part of it. And they said, well, we'll just go ahead and send you the speaker agreement. And they decided that they were paying him $15,000. So that became his rate.
But like you said, sometimes, like I think it's coming up in December, January.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Branson has an event coming up,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to be speaking at that event
I
but
love it.
the way I started it is because out of the 6 speakers that are there, I've interviewed 5 of them. But Mr. Branson is the only one I haven't got yet. But that's how I got there, because I interviewed 5 of the other people. So, because of who I know and who I've built the relationships with, they're like, well, you got to come, you know?
I love it. I love
So,
it.
but again, it's also, like now that me and you became friends, you're on the show. I believe in building generational relationships. So now, I'm going to follow you on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, comment, start building those relationships. And I think the biggest thing is now, especially in the world that we live in, is everything is relational capital. Everything is about relationships. And like you said, even that's why so many business deals get done on the golf course or at a
Mm-hmm.
dinner instead of in a boardroom, because it's those relationships that were built up on the golf course or
Mm-hmm.
at the dinner that actually becomes more fruitful. So how does somebody, because when we get out of the military or when we're in the military, we're taught, no fraternizing, everything is dress right dress, everybody's the same. So how do you differentiate yourself when you get out of the military? And how do you start building relationships where at one point we were taught not to build relationships?
Well, I think you just gave a lot of great advice on that yourself, Richard. But one thing I would have done differently, and would certainly do differently if I was getting out now, is in the last year or months before I got out, I would get on LinkedIn. I would reach out to people. I would do what you said and offer value to them in the ways that I felt like I could, whether that's a comment or it's subscribing to their podcast or giving them information that you think is interesting. And I think a trap that a lot of people get caught up in is thinking, well, what do I have to offer that person? Because oh my gosh, that person is so successful or they're so huge or however people perceive them. But in a lot of ways, just like when we're in the service, look, you're all putting your uniform on one pant leg at a time, regardless of where your life and career and choices have taken you. So you can always offer value to people. It's just thinking about what is it that you want to do to be of service to them. And going ahead and doing that even before you get out and doing it when you get out and not being afraid to ask for help. Because every person who has veteran on their profile, they've been in your shoes. They got out. They know how challenging it is. They will absolutely help you. I'm sure there might be a few folks that wouldn't, but for every one person who's too busy to help or doesn't want to help, there are 10 that are ready, willing, and able to assist you. You just have to get up the gumption and ask.
And one thing that I do, I guess because I am a Christian, I believe that the Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, He is my Lord and Savior. So every day I wake up, I try to be a blessing to somebody. So I'll go on my Facebook page and I look for people to be a blessing to. Like if I see somebody's name and, they're looking for a plumber. Well, if I know a plumber, I'm going to tell you, listen, Joe, meet Frank, and they hit it off together. All of a sudden, I'm helping somebody else, but also
Mm-hmm.
there people are realizing, wait a minute, he's not asking for anything. He's just trying to help me out. So you become the hero because you're trying to help two other people. You're looking one for the plumber that's looking for work. Then you're looking for the guys that need his plumbing done, and you just hook these two people up, and you're not asking for nothing. But all of a sudden, now they're going to start thinking, wait a minute, that guy Rich, he helped me out without even asking for anything. And I think that's a great
Right.
way for me. That's a great hack for me. When I wake up in the morning, I look, who can I bless today? Who can I help? Who can use people that I know who can use their services? And I think if people started doing that, especially on LinkedIn, I think that would help out a lot.
100%. Well, and it's funny, Rich, because you were just explaining when people say, what skill do you have? What would you do if the world was coming to an end? And I was like, I would help people find what they needed because I don't have the skills like the people are like, well, I have weapons or I know how to do this or I can build a house or I can help people find what they need. And I think that a lot of us underestimate that skill within ourselves. We underestimate the value of it. And we also underestimate that, yes, everyone can do it, but not a lot of people do. There aren't a lot of people who are helping people every day, which is an amazing goal. And it is just as fulfilling for you as it is for the folks that you help. But it is such a small group of people that are doing that you stand out so much.
Yep. Okay. So now for the last couple minutes, like I said, I've been binge listening to your podcast. Love your
Well,
podcast.
thank you for that.
Yep. Your book is truly amazing. It's on my. It's I have Now I'm only a ninth grade dropout, but I've read over 6,000 books,
Oh,
and I
that's
have 15.
amazing.
I have 15,000 books. I mean, 15 books going right now as we speak, and yours is
Nice.
one of the 15. So talk to us a little bit about what you're doing and what you got going on now.
So, right now, I'm actually starting to build out the education arm of my business. So, for the past 6 years, I have been working one on one with CEOs and leaders and entrepreneurs and helping them scale or turn around their businesses. And the one thing that has really been on my heart is that I want to impact and help more people. And not everyone who needs that skill set is in a place to hire someone to come in and do those things. And so I am going to be working really diligently to build out two educational lines of my business, one specific on mindset and the and how to build it and work on it to get it to serve you in every area of your life. And the second is to build a business acceleration program that people can do on their own and also augmented with me doing some group sessions with folks so that they can take their own business and double their revenue in half the time without bringing someone else in.
Okay, now last week I had a gentleman on, and he was a neuroscientist, which is way
Mm-hmm.
out of my league. But we started talking about mindset. We
Mm-hmm.
started talking about NLP. We
Uh-huh.
started talking about like how the brain really hasn't changed much in the last 120 years. Since Think and Grow Rich came out.
Mm-hmm.
Dale Carnegie, Andrew Carnegie. Um, but a lot of people don't realize that in life, whether you succeed or fix or fail, 99% of it is your mindset. Because if you don't have the
100%.
mindset, you can have everything else and you're going to fail. So, talk to us about successful mindset.
It's funny that you say that. So in Magic Blue Rocks, and that is just 6 short stories from my life. By the way, you can get it at the library. You do not have to buy it. So for someone who's listening, if it is not in your budget to buy a book, I actually did a totally different deal with Amazon and Audible just so it could be in libraries. So you can get it for free. And the whole point of it is the only thing I had was mindset. So these are 6 stories starting when I was 6 years old up until starting my company, and how sheerly the belief and the mindset saying I could do things. I didn't have any money, no contacts. I had very little education, and I was able to make these things happen simply because I believed I could, and I didn't focus on what people were saying. I focused on what I wanted. And that is really the power of mindset, because you can have everything else, but if you don't believe and focus on the things that you want, it's always going to get in your way. So, but it works both ways, because if you work to cultivate that self belief, there isn't a thing that is out of reach for you.
All right. So, like one thing I just wrote down is there's a difference between an employee mindset
Mm-hmm.
and an entrepreneur mindset. Because the
Mm-hmm.
employee mindset, you're going to go to work, you're going to get paid on Friday, you're going to get your, whatever you got. But as an entrepreneur, they say an entrepreneur is somebody that's willing to work 80 hours so they don't have to work 40 hours for somebody else. But if you don't work, you don't get paid, you don't make money.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us the difference between having to flip the script from having a employee mindset to having an entrepreneur mindset. It's a major difference.
It is. And I think it can be really difficult, even for folks who love to work, who love to have responsibility, who maybe had responsibility for a division or a P&L. When you're responsible for everything, that mindset is very different for a couple of reasons. One, it can be daunting to sell yourself. So when you're in your role and you have your job, and even if you're in a sales role, you're selling what your company can do, you're selling a product, and you're really responsible for one small area. Then as an entrepreneur, it's okay, now I have to go out and really be seen. I have to show myself and who I am and what I can do. And that can be really scary for people. It can be much scarier than being employed. Now, what's interesting is there's a false security in being employed. You could be fired tomorrow. Your business could go under tomorrow. That is not at all within your control. Yet, as an entrepreneur, all of your success is within your control. And so that shift, looking at it as, okay, I'm responsible for everything, man, that's a lot of responsibility. But it's also an amazing amount of control, and it's an amazing amount of opportunity. The options and things you can do are endless. And so again, and I go back to this every time, I can turn anything into mindset, Rich. You focus on what you do want, not what you don't want. So you don't focus on the responsibility and that you may be working more hours. You focus on, I am in control. I can be my own hero. I may be working more hours right now, but I'm going to work far less hours later because I was willing to put this time in. And by the way, I'm doing something that I believe in, that is my purpose, that gives me so much of what I want. And even if you're building a business that maybe you want to sell, or you're building a business because you want financial freedom and it's not yet aligned with your purpose, realize that getting that financial freedom to then focus on the things that you want to is a wonderful purpose. So that change doesn't happen overnight, but it's something that as it's happening for you, more and more of the world opens up to you.
Okay, now something that, like when I first started this business, and I think now it's been 3 years since we've been up and running,
Mm-hmm.
I wish somebody would have told me, that's why the whole show is what it is, why I talk about, how being an entrepreneur, a vetrepreneur can actually help save people's lives. Because once we get out of the military and we no longer have a mission, it's a scary place. But once we start, maybe starting a business or 401(k)(3)s, whatever, or nonprofit, once we have a mission, we're a lot less likely to take our own lives when we have a mission. But for me, I wish somebody would have told me how important branding, how important marketing, and most of all, and I just took a major course on copywriting. It's amazing how important copywriting is, but nobody ever really talks about how important copy is. And the guy that I had on the show, he taught me, he said, just go to whenever you go check out and look at all the different magazines there and look at all the copy.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to make you want to pick up that magazine? Because a lot of people, oh, I have the greatest merchandise. But if nobody knows about it,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter. So if your branding, marketing, and copyright is not on point, it's worthless. So talk to us a little bit about that, especially being a vetrepreneur.
So I think that can be incredibly daunting for people because either that is in your wheelhouse and your skill set or it isn't. But I have a great piece of news for you. Remember we talked about relationships earlier, and we talked about the value of your network and the people that you know. If you don't feel like you're great at branding and marketing, and those are two very different things, and copywriting, there is someone in your network who is. There is someone who does know those things and who would be willing to help you. And I think a lot of times we underestimate the size of our network, or we think, oh, that person wouldn't know. Well, that person might not know, but they might know someone who does, who'd be willing to help you with it. And there are skills and things that you're great at that you can help that person with. So I always try and focus on the things that if I were to rate myself on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm somewhere between an 8 to a 10 on. Those are the things I'm going to do in my business. If I'm not that good at it, then I am either going to buy my way out of it and pay someone to do it for me, or if I have budget constraints, I'm going to look at my network and see how can I help you with something, and maybe in return you can help me with this thing that I'm not as good at. Because you can get lost in studying and trying to become good at everything. And so choosing the things that you want to focus on and then choosing the things that you would like your network to augment for you is really important.
That's one thing that my wife always laughs at me, because that's one of my best sayings is, you don't know what you don't know, so hire somebody that does know. But
Right.
when I first started this show, I was negative because now, all of a sudden I don't have a job because I'm blind. And so I have $0. So the people that actually helped me grow my show, I said, listen, I can't pay you now, but every time the show goes out, I will promote your business. So they're the ones that help me with my graphics. They're the ones that help me, with my branding and all that. And I didn't pay anything because I didn't have anything. But now I've helped them grow their businesses and help them flourish because they all helped me at one time. So I really believe in what you talk about is, There's, like back when my parents were growing up, if you knew a mechanic guy, he would fix your car. If your mother cooked some great food and made them dinner,
Mm-hmm.
there was that whole bartering thing, and I think you could still
Absolutely.
do that today, but nobody ever really talks about that. Now it's all about, well, what can I get? What can I get? You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And look how well that worked out, not only for you, but also for the people who helped you. First, they had the gift of being able to help someone, which is a gift in itself. And then, second, I bet you are incredibly loyal to those individuals because at a time that you really needed that help, they were happy to provide it. And it just creates this really neat symbiotic relationship where everyone flourishes.
Yep. And it's all about, for me, it's all about loyalty. My I call them my amigos. There's like six of us that they're my ride or die. They know that
Love it.
I know that if something happens, Mark is going to be in his truck driving from Florida. Kurt's going to be driving from North Carolina. So I have my amigos that I know that if I make that phone call, that they're on their way, or vice versa. So last question is, how do we find you? How do we support your mission?
So if you can spell my last name, you can find me. I'm the only April Shprintz in the US. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram. Also, I would love for folks to listen to my podcast. It's 10 minutes or less, and it's a how to for mastering a winning mindset. It's that Winning Mindset Mastery podcast. And anything that you need help with, whether that's you, Rich, or your folks listening, don't be afraid to reach out. That's why I'm here. And I live to help folks.
All right, guys. So you heard it. So make sure you check her out. She got an amazing LinkedIn profile. Um, uh, she's doing a lot of different things. Like I said, I've been listening to her podcast. So make sure you check it out, especially if you're trying to up level your mindset. Make sure you check her out. But guys, I want to say, thank you so much for being a part of my journey and letting me be a part of your journey. And like my T-shirt says, today I decided. Because the three most important words in the English language are today I decide. Because you don't have to be the same person when you go to bed tonight, the same person that woke up this morning. Um, you can decide to be the victim or the victor. So guys, just make that decision today that you want to become the victor, and you will change your life. I love you guys. Thank you so much. April, thank you so much, and have an amazing week.
Oh, same. Thank you, Rich. I appreciate it.
All right, guys, I love you. I'll catch you guys on a weekend. Have a Be safe out there on Halloween. Make sure you save all the dark chocolate for me because I love the dark chocolate. All right, guys, I love you, and remember, vertical momentum. The only way to go is up. I love you guys. Have a great weekend.